Good evening. My name is Eileen Sobjak. I'm the president of the National Federation of Republican Women. I am so pleased tonight. We have our first Empower Hour program hosted by the illustrious Glennis Chester. She has an exciting program for you. Welcome, Glennis. Let's get started.
Thank you so much, President Sobjak. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to do the Empower Hour. This is such an exciting time to be a Republican. And I'm just thrilled to be able to be part of NFRW and doing these programs to help our members. So let's get started. The goal of this series, just in case you don't know, is to provide in-depth discussions on issues that are forefront in today's culture. I want to have experts that are in their respective fields to provide you with the tools to speak with authority on topics that are very, very important in today's political landscape. So you as our members will be more equipped than ever before to talk about the issues that are important to you. So today's program, we're going to be discussing border security and Title 42. I hope that you're already familiar a little bit with that term, but if not, you will be before the end of the evening. And before I introduce our guest presenter, I want to remind everyone to please keep yourselves muted. And if you have a question, please type it into the chat feature. And we will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the program from the chat. But we want to be respectful of our speakers' time. So with that in mind, our speaker today he is so amazing. I actually had him speak at my club several years ago, and I've watched his career since then, and he is, well, you'll love him. He's fantastic. His name is Judd. He's the president of the National Border Patrol Council. He's highly regarded as an expert on border security and illegal immigration. He's served as a border agent for over 20 years. He's been the president of his council for, I think, 9 years now. He's testified before Congress numerous times as an expert on border security, and at the request of President Trump, participated in multiple roundtables and press conferences to discuss which measures would be most effective to secure our border. So if President Trump trusts him, then I think we can trust him too. If Brandon looks familiar to you, it's because he is a frequent guest on Fox News and other outlets that are interested in the truth about what's going on at the border. And as you know, we don't always hear the truth from every newslet out there. So without any further ado, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us. Please tell us about what's going on at the border, what you see in the future, and what it looks like for Title 42.
Well, thank you, Glennis. That was a great introduction. I'm very flattered, a little bit overboard. I am not that great, but you know, my wife, she always puts me in my place. It's really great to be with a bunch of great women. If it weren't for the women in this country, we just wouldn't be where we're at. That's just the simple fact. I'm grateful that there are a lot more women today that are joining the Border Patrol than what did when I originally entered on duty back in 1997. I think that as we get more women into law enforcement, we become much better. I think that when there are a lot more women that are involved in politics, I think that we become a much better country. So I'm grateful for all that you do. Let me start off real quick just to give you an overview of where we're at as far as the agents go. I will personally tell you that we have some of the best agents around, some of the best law enforcement officers that exist. In fact, to give you a good example of how good our officers were, a very good friend of mine, her name is Samantha. She was a Border Patrol agent, and she was in the process of applying for the CIA. She made it that far. That is extremely impressive and very difficult to do. In fact, it came down between her and two other agents of different agencies, DEA and FBI. Both of those were male. They all got down to the last. There was only one position available, and she was in the last three. Well, in this process, if any of you have ever been former law enforcement, you know that when you go through this hiring process, you have to go through a battery of tests. Some are written, some are physical, and then you take what we call an oral board. You have to sit before a bunch of what will ultimately be your peers, and they hit you up with a battery of questions, and you have to go through and you have to justify why you would take certain actions. Well, like I said, she came down to one of the last three, and they made it through their written test, they made it through their physical test, and it came down to the oral boards, and that was the last process here. Well, the first person to go in for this oral board, it was the FBI agent. And he went in and he did a phenomenal job. Now, I want to remind you, these were thousands of applicants that got down to this one position. But he went in and he did a fantastic job. Everybody knew he was going to do a great job at the oral board, and he did. He did a great job. Well, the CIA, being what it is, as extremely important as it is, they asked the last question. And this was the telling question. The CIA asked the FBI agent, they said, will you do anything and everything this country needs you to do? Will you do what we ask you to do? The FBI agent said, absolutely. Well, the lead panel person put a gun in front of the FBI agent, said, your wife's in the next room. You know what we want you to do. And the FBI agent looked at the panel and says, I can't do that. And they said, thank you very much. You're not CIA material. Well, the DEA agent was the next person up, and he went in and before the panel and did the same thing, went through all of the series of questions, answered them, knocked them all out of the park, did a fantastic job. Came down to the last question, and they said, will you do anything and everything that our country needs you to do without question? And the DEA agent said, yeah, I absolutely will do that. Well, the lead panel personnel put the gun in front of him and said, your wife's in the next room. You know what we need you to do. And DEA agent picks up the gun, takes a couple steps, and he stops and says, I can't do that. And they said, well, thank you very much. You're not CIA material. Well, my friend, Samantha, she was the last person. She came in and she did the same thing. She just knocked everything out of the park. Questions were spot on, her answers. She was able to justify every law enforcement action she would take. Came down to the last question. They said, will you do anything and everything we need you to do? Same thing. And she said, absolutely. No hesitation to her answer. They put the gun in front of her and said, your husband's in the next room. You know what we want you to do. She didn't hesitate. She just picked up that gun, went right into the next room. The next 10 minutes, this panel heard a bunch of kicking, scratching, clawing, chairs hitting the wall. And after about 10 minutes, she walked back out and she's sweating profusely. And she said, the gun was empty. I had to strangle the idiot. Obviously, that's a joke. Plays out a little bit better in person. I hope that went well. Over Zoom, I don't know how it goes. But that was just to illustrate what your agents are out there doing. They are doing the best that they possibly can in a situation that is very difficult. I want to take you back, and this is true. That obviously did not really happen, but this is true. I want to take you back to October 7th, 2016. I hope everybody remembers that. That's the day that the Access Hollywood story broke about then candidate Trump. And you know, the comments that he had made, the locker room talk that he engaged in. Okay, that is what everybody thought. Well, that's what the Democrats thought was going to ensure that he doesn't win a election, his first election. So October 7th. Well, on October 6th, I got a call from Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller was the longest serving advisor to the president. And previous to that, he worked very hard on President Trump's campaign. I got a call on October 6th, and Stephen says, hey, Brandon, Donald Trump wants to speak with you in Manhattan at Trump Towers tomorrow. And I was like, Stephen, I can't make that. I'm in the middle of Montana. At the time, I was stationed up on the northern border in Montana. And I said, Stephen, I can't, Montana is very sparse. There's not like airports on any corner like what you would find in New York City. I said, how about the following day? And Stephen said, no, it has to be tomorrow. And he said, and if you can make it, please bring some of your other guys. I'm like, okay, let me see what I can do. So I jumped on a red eye. got several of my other officers, and we went out to Manhattan. They lived in places that was a little bit easier to access Manhattan, so they flew in that night, and I took a red eye, landed, ran directly over to Trump Towers. We were speaking with again, at that time, he was not the president, he was a candidate. He was the Republican nominee, and I'd never seen him so somber before, ever. I'd never seen him like what he was, like what it was at that time. He was very down. And you know, we're discussing border security, and the next thing we know, the press starts piling in, and we didn't know this was going to happen. This was in his boardroom at Trump Towers in Manhattan, and the press starts piling in, and they start putting name tags up on the tables like what they normally do when there's going to be a press conference. And so we realized what was going on. I took a seat to the direct left of President Trump. Art Del Cueto took a seat directly to his right, and then a couple of my other officers spanning out along the table. Well, the president immediately turned it over to me and said, "Brandon, tell them what's going on the border. Tell them what's happening." And so I gave a brief overview because I know that the press is going to want to ask him questions. So I kept it as brief as I could. I gave a brief overview of the situation that we face on the border, what was happening on the border, what needs to be done, how we can get the border under control for the safety and security of the American public. When I got done, he looked over to his right and he asked Art, he said, "Art, why are they coming here? Why are people coming here? Why are they violating the laws and crossing the border illegally?" Art gave a brief summary. All of the benefits are coming here because there's a lot of jobs, but there's also social benefits. They can put their children in school. You know, all of the different things that this country offers, Art goes through. And Trump says, no, why are they coming here? And Art basically repeats the exact same thing, not understanding where the president, what the president was driving at. And the president looks at him and says, no, they're coming here to vote. They're coming here to vote, right? And Art said, yeah, they're coming here to vote. And, you know, right when he said that, my phone starts ringing off the hook. I'm getting text messages. You name the outlet, whether it was the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, you name it, my phone was just pinging left and right. And it was proof. Where's the evidence? Where's your proof? And I don't mind when my officers go off script. That's not a problem, but I would like to be prepared so that I can have the evidence. I will tell you, if there is anybody that thinks that people are not violating our laws to come over here to have all of the benefits, which includes participating in government, you're wrong. We know that they're coming over. All you have to do is look at New York right now. New York just tried to pass a law. I don't think that it's passed yet, but they're going to, the bill that they've introduced would allow non-citizens to participate in government. That's not supposed to happen. So yes, they do come here to do all that, but that takes us to our current crisis today. What's interesting about this crisis, we have never seen anything like this before. The criminal cartels, they have learned how to exploit our immigration loopholes. And by learning how to exploit our immigration loopholes, they have now become transnational criminal organizations. What transnational means is they work in several different countries. They work across borders. It used to be just out of Mexico. That's all we dealt with. We dealt with criminal cartels that were working out of Mexico. They were bringing people from around the world, but just not at very high levels. Now they're transnational criminal organizations. And China has a direct impact on those criminal organizations. These organizations are now able to go throughout the entire world, and they're able to advertise their services, and they're able to generate billions of dollars in revenue based upon our policies here in the United States, based upon this administration's policies. If you look, since this administration has been in office, which is just a little over a year and 2 months, we have already added a minimum of 1.7 illegal aliens to our population. This administration, under what is dubbed the Catch and Release Program, has released nearly 1 million people that have been apprehended violating our laws into the United States. And then when you add on top of that, the 700,000 known gotaways, that's what's known, people that crossed the border illegally and were able to evade apprehension. That means just in this short, little over a year, this administration has already added 1.7 million people to our population. Just to put that in perspective, there are 6 states in the United States that don't even have that many people. I believe there's a couple more than that. So we've added the population of a state. I don't know where everybody's from, but I am from the Tucson, Arizona area. That city has a little over 500,000 official residents. That means we have added nearly 3 Tucsons to our population just in the time since President Biden has taken office. Now, the question is that we get all the time is, well, what is catch and release? Why are they releasing them? How are they releasing them? And what that is when somebody crosses our borders illegally, they have the right to a deportation proceeding, or they have the right to claim asylum. When they do that, when they ask for a deportation proceeding or asylum, that means they have the right to present their case before a judge. Now, the burden of proof is on them. It's not on the federal government. This isn't a criminal proceeding. So the burden of proof is not on the federal government. It's on them to show that they have a legal right to be here in the United States. The problem is the cartels have recognized that all they have to do is flood our resources, and then it backs up the system. And when you back up the system, you can't get these court appearances through quick enough. So it takes approximately 800 days right now for these court appearances. So what the government does is they release people pending that court proceeding. The problem is once that court proceeding comes up, these people just don't show up to their court appearances. They disappear into what President Obama termed the shadows of society. So these 1.7 million known people, again, that's what we know of. That's what we detected and apprehended or that got away. They're just never going to leave the United States. It's not going to happen. And what they're hoping to do is they're hoping to wait out pending the next amnesty that's going to come across. And that's what the Democrats currently are talking about right now. They're talking about immigration reform. And anytime that you hear immigration reform, that's the buzzword for amnesty or legalizing the people that violated our laws. Now, the reason why that is so scary and the reason why it frustrates Border Patrol agents to no end is because it's through these policies that these organized crime, these transnational organizations, they're able to advertise their services, telling everybody, all you have to do is give me several $1,000s. I will get you to the Mexico-US border. You cross the border, and even if you're apprehended, you're still going to be released. So you're still going to get what you want. In other words, we're rewarding them for violating our laws. When we release them, we're giving them a reward. And not only are we rewarding them, but when we release them with what we call an NTA or a notice to appear, they're now eligible for all of the benefits that any other person that's legal in the United States. They can then go get driver's licenses. They can put their kids in school. They can apply for work permits. They can do all of those different things. And that's why we see so many people violating our laws. There are solutions to this, and this administration knows this. This is not a secret. We can either go back to President Trump's solution, which was hold people in Mexico, not release them into the United States, but hold them in Mexico pending their asylum or deportation proceeding, or hold them in our custody here in the United States, but do not release them. Now, the pushback that you're going to get is the pundits will say, well, we just don't have the resources to hold hundreds of thousands of people every single month in custody. You don't have to. Once you hold people in custody, they will stop coming. They will not give thousands of dollars to criminal organizations just to be held in custody and sent back to their country when they're not able to prove that they have a legitimate claim. Remember, only 7 to 14% of people that claim to have an asylum reason to be here are able to prove that. Therefore, the vast majority get sent back that actually show up to court. So these people recognize that they don't have a legitimate claim. They just want to get released into the United States, get those benefits for those 2 years, and then disappear into, again, the shadows of society, never to be seen or heard from again. And that's the problem, but there are solutions, and the solutions are fairly simple. It's really not rocket science, and it's been proven time and time again. The problem is right now, everything is based upon politics. Everything is based upon how do I get reelected? If I'm a politician, I'm just worried about my next reelection. And I'm only worried about the state or district that I come from. And as we have seen, and I'll give Ocasio-Cortez is a great example. Her district is very, very liberal. She knows that she can be as liberal as she wants, and she's still going to get reelected. There's also very conservative districts in the United States. Andy Biggs, for example, he can be as conservative as he wants, and he's going to get reelected. But then you have to look at those districts where there is more of a bipartisan flavor, which becomes a little bit more difficult. So these politicians, all they're doing is pandering to what they think is going to give them the votes. They don't care what's necessarily best for the United States. They simply care about the votes. And because of that, this crisis continues to rage. We continue to discuss illegal immigration year in and year out. This has been going on for as long as my career has been going on, which spans nearly 25 years now. So that's the problem that we have.
Yes, so Brandon, I want to back up for just a minute before you move on to your next point. Gives you a chance to drink a glass of water too. You mentioned that we don't have the facilities to hold these people. Now, I know that we just opened a facility in the Del Rio sector of Texas, near Eagle Pass. For those of you who are from Texas, you know where that is. I think in April. And we have another one opening up soon. It's under construction now. And the one that they're about to open up, they're calling it a processing facility. And it's going to cost roughly $6 million a month just for basic operating costs. Can you tell us, well, one, if these centers are going to help us or hurt us in the long run? And B, when processing facility, is that simply to find out whether they're asylum seekers or something else, or is this actually a holding facility?
So these facilities are not long-term holding facilities. They're temporary holding facilities. The Border Patrol, we can only hold them in custody for 72 hours. That's all the Border Patrol can by law. Oftentimes we end up holding them longer than that, but we're violating the law when we do. So you can only hold people in these types of facilities on a short-term basis. But let me reiterate one point. We do have the facilities. I'm saying that the political pundits are going to tell you that the facilities do not exist. We do have the facilities because, once again, we're not going to have to hold hundreds of thousands of people. The moment you start holding people and you do not release them, they stop coming. So you don't need facilities to hold hundreds of thousands of people. All of this works on social media. And when we're releasing people, that message gets sent back to these countries, 157 different countries. That message gets sent back, people come. When you start holding people, that message also gets sent back saying, hey, don't come because now you're just wasting thousands of dollars to these criminal organizations. And let me be clear. I make a very good living. I don't know what everybody else does, but I make a very good living. But I don't have $30,000 just sitting around to give to a smuggler. And I live in the richest country in the world. These people also do not have $30,000 just sitting around. When they come into the United States, they go into indentured servitude to pay that debt off. Believe it or not, we do have modern day slavery here in this country. And it's in the form of criminal cartels forcing people to go to work to pay their debt off, which takes multiple years to do. It's a very dangerous and very ugly situation that currently exists. And it only exists because politicians allow it to exist. And it could in fact go away. So Glennis, thank you. That is a very important question. It's very important for us to understand that resources, we do currently have the resources that are necessary as long as we can marry the proper policy with the resources. And President Trump proved that. He proved that with the Remain in Mexico. Once people were forced to remain in Mexico, they stopped coming and we dropped to 45-year lows in the illegal immigration. And that's very important because when we drop to lows in the illegal immigration, it then allows us to target the cartels, these transnational organizations. It allows us to go after them and the criminality, the dangerous drugs that are crossing into the United States, the criminal aliens that they're bringing into the United States, the aliens from special interest countries, Yemen, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Iraq, Iran, all of these countries that want to do harm to the United States. Those are higher value products that the criminal cartels work in and makes them a lot of money. And we can go after their profits if we don't have to deal with illegal immigration. That's why the cartels do it. The cartels recognize that the more people that they can get to cross our borders illegally, the more it pulls our resources out of the field. And when we pull our resources out of the field, it creates gaps in our coverage on the border, which then allows them to cross our higher value products. There should be no surprise that the number of overdose deaths in the United States has risen to a level that we just haven't seen in years upon years. And it coincides with illegal immigration, the rising illegal immigration. You can talk to any police officer today, and they will tell you that the amount of product, the amount of drugs that they're seeing on the streets today is higher than at any period in their careers. And it coincides with illegal immigration. And that's simply because the cartels overwhelm Border Patrol resources. When they cross a group of 100 people into the United States, now what you're doing is you're pulling Border Patrol agents from different areas that then have to come take these people in custody, take them back to the Border Patrol stations and process them. When they go back to the Border Patrol station, you're taking resources out of the field. And when you take resources out of the field, that's when the gaps are created, and that's when the cartels cross our higher value products. And again, what's frustrating is that they're doing this all on our policies. And if we had the proper policies, none of this would be happening, and we wouldn't be having the overdose deaths here in the United States. So we have to ask ourselves, why? Why is this administration allowing this to happen? And it always comes back to politics. It comes back to the base. How do we appease the base? How do we energize the base? How do we ensure that the base is going to get out and vote? And that's what politics today has become. And it's thrown the country under the bus. And again, that's both on the right and the left. Right now, we're just seeing it more on the left. And frankly, I believe in the causes of the right. So when they push those causes, I'm generally in agreement with that. Because we've seen that the causes that the right generally push generally tends to be for the benefit of the country as a whole rather than individual segments. So that's a brief overview of what we see on our border today and the chaos that exists. This administration refuses to define the problem. And if you will not define the problem, you're never going to come up with the solutions to ensure that problem goes away. Again, very simple. We see it. We've seen it every day. We just now have to get behind the right people to ensure that the laws are enforced in a manner that was meant so that we can protect the American public, we can protect the people that we were sworn to protect, which is United States citizens. With that, Glennis, I'm going to turn it back over to you. And if there's any questions, I'd love to answer as many questions as I possibly can.
Okay, well, I do have another one, actually. President Trump had several policies that brought illegal immigration to an all-time low. One of them that you mentioned was the Remain in Mexico. One of them was building a wall. But the other one was Title 42. And we are looking at well, I guess it's about to expire, and it has to be, they have to vote to have it extended. And it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Can you please tell us a little bit about what Title 42 is and why it's at least a Band-Aid that helps? It gives you another tool for what you have to do on the border.
So United States laws are broken up into different titles, what we call them codes. The codes of the US code. Right now, Title 42 is part of that code. That code, that portion of the law is enforced by the Centers, CDC, Center for Disease, whatever. Yes, disease control, thank you. CDC enforces Title 42. And what they've done is they've delegated authority to immigration officers to immediately expel people that enter our country that could present a health risk. And so Title 42, it's just a portion of the law that allows for the immediate expulsion of individuals trying to enter our country. Now, that's expulsion for those that are trying to enter legally and illegally, but it's more enforced with those that are entering illegally because they're not presenting themselves at a specific port of entry, showing that they have proof of, not having a disease or whatever. Now, I want to be clear about this. Title 42 does not only have to do with the pandemic. Title 42 was put in place, and the CDC has the authority to say any communicable disease that's not necessarily seen here in the United States. And we see a lot of different diseases coming in that's not just COVID-19, diseases that are not readily spread throughout the United States, but could be based upon people. So they don't have to just enforce Title 42 just because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Even when that pandemic is gone, they could continue to say, well, there are diseases that we just don't see very often here in the United States that are coming for these countries. Therefore, we can continue to expel these individuals. President Trump, under President Trump, the CDC declared an emergency and used their authority under Title 42 to allow immigration officers to immediately expel people. Once that comes to an end, and that is scheduled to come to an end on May 23rd, May 23rd. Once that's scheduled to come to an end, we can expect to see a huge influx of people crossing our border. So right now, we're at the highest numbers we've ever seen in the history of the Border Patrol. This just isn't under President Biden, but you can go back in the history of the Border Patrol. We have never seen the numbers that we've seen today, and they're about to get worse once Title 42 goes away. And it still circles right back to politics. The open border base, the open border pundits want President Biden to get rid of Title 42, and he's acquiescing.
It's really frightening because if you think about it, you said we have 152 countries represented in the illegal immigrants that you've seen crossing. I mean, we're looking at COVID is the least of the things we have to be concerned about. They have Ebola. They're exposed to all sorts of things that we're just not used to seeing here in the States. And if they come over and they're just released, now we're all exposed to that. So imagine, I can't even imagine the medical risk that we would be undertaking by seeing Title 42 go away. The one thing we didn't really touch on was human trafficking too much. And I know that it's hard to talk about because it's such an ugly topic, but it's right up there with drug trafficking as far as how people are paying for their passage across the border. And it's really, really scary. And I know that especially in our organization, the end of human trafficking is very, very important to us. But the only way we're going to stop it is by one, you have to get rid of the the customers. You know,
Yes.
it's sad to say, but there's, you know,
That's what it
unfortunately,
is.
there are people that, you know, if there's a want, there's going to be a supply, right? So we have to get rid of that. And I'm not sure how we're going to do that. But the second one is we have to firm up our border. We have to have sovereignty, and we've got to stop these people coming over and just taking advantage of, especially the children, when they're sent over because their parents want them to have a better life. I wonder if they have any idea what they're really sending them to do. I mean, the horror stories I've heard from agents, I wish I could unhear, but I can't. But thank you so much. I'm so appreciative of everything so far. Yes.
Yeah, let me touch on the human trafficking aspect of what we deal with. And this is something that is very, very difficult for every single Border Patrol agent that is out there. When we come across young girls that are coming into this country by themselves, when you're talking about 11 to 22, 23-year-old women, you can see it in their accountants. You can see what they've been through, even though they're not going to be willing to tell you what happened, because they have been threatened that if they tell the authorities, this is what's going to happen to them. You can see it. We take senators, elected officials out on the border all the time, and every now and then they'll bring along their spouses. And I can tell you, just about a month ago, we had a very good senator and his spouse and his daughter with us, and we were out in McAllen, Texas, and we came across a group, and there were several young women in that group of people that crossed the border, and they were by themselves, and you could tell by their countenance exactly what they went through and what they're going into. Now the problem is they don't do this voluntarily. They don't know that they're being trafficked into the United States just to be put into the sex industry. They don't know that, and they don't understand it. They get a taste of it with the rapes that take place as they're coming up through the United States. And once they get in, they recognize exactly what's happening to them. And they're still not going to say anything because of the threats that have been given, the violence that will be done to them and their family members back in their home country. And so they do actually submit to this. Now, there are two ways. Well, there's two things that must happen. You have to target the traffickers here in the United States. You have to go after the sex industry here in the United States, but you also have to stop it before it even comes into the United States. And that's why policies are so important. And that's why we're always shaking our heads. You constantly hear, and I don't mean to pick on just one segment, but you constantly hear liberals say, we care about people, we care about people, we care about people. I can personally tell you that's lip service, and it's nothing more than lip service. Because if they truly cared about people, it's the rule of law that allows us to protect people. If we properly enforce the rule of law, that's what keeps society safe and protected. When we ignore those laws, like what is currently going on right now, that's when you see all of the problems that we're currently seeing and experiencing today. We have become a country that is a lot less safe today than what it was when I was in high school, when I was in grade school. And that's truly sad, because I want to pass on to my children, my grandchildren, the same country that I was able to grow up in, which generally speaking was a very safe country.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We do have a few minutes left. So Erica, could you tell me if we have some questions that Brandon might be able to answer for us?
Don't have any questions.
Okay.
Yeah, not yet. I haven't seen any questions come up, just a few comments.
Just comments. I keep seeing things pop up, but I didn't have time to read them. Okay, I did just see a question pop up. It might be at the very bottom of the chat.
Here we go. Thank you so much for your hard work. What can we do on a local, state level?
Thank you. That is so important. Local activism is extremely important, and it's most important in districts and areas where people might not necessarily agree with you. What happens is politicians are always going to do what is going to be best for their election. Let me give you an example. Right now, you have several Democrats that are breaking from the president as we speak on border security. You've got Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema, Mark Kelly, John Tester, Debbie Hassan. These are very prominent Democrats, and they're pushing back against this administration as far as border security goes, because they're hearing from their constituents. Their constituents are letting them know that they're not happy with the current state of affairs on our border. And because they're letting them know that they're not happy, these people are more willing to break from their own party and go and do what's best for the country. So if we have more activism in this country, if we have more people that are willing to let their politicians know how unhappy they are with the current state of affairs, those politicians are going to be more willing to do what's right. What's funny is, and what we constantly see is people in districts, if you look at how the legislature is ready, you know, we constantly hear about President Biden's poll numbers. They continue to go down. They're going down. They're going down. Well, Congress, their poll numbers are always in the tank. But the problem is everybody blames somebody else outside of their district. They say, well, my congressman is great. It's your congressman that's the problem. And as long as that happens, then we're always going to get the status quo. If we back our own congressmen instead of pushing them to do what's right, then we're not going to get what's right done. So we have to look within our own districts, within our own states, and we have to push our elected officials to do what is right.
I will say that at least here in Texas, it's become very evident that there is a morale problem within our border patrol. And it's totally understandable because, I mean, you're busting your butts all the time. And it seems like they just keep, the government, your bosses, are working against you. They're like, oh, here, by the way, make this work and we're not going to give you any tools. And then if anything goes wrong, we're going to blame you. You know, so it's like, how do you do that? Plus, it's just the horrible things that you see every day. How do you not take that home? So I will say that one of the things that we have done, and I know that this is something Republican women are really, really good at, is we have started collecting supplies that our border agents are not getting from the federal government. We find out what they need. We collect supplies, but more importantly, we collect thank you notes. And we get thank you notes from everyone we can find. And sometimes we'll put gift cards in them for, you know, gas or restaurants or whatever, just little, you know, $10, $15, $20, nothing big. But it's something that said, you know, a card that says, thank you for what you're doing. We are praying for you and your family. We appreciate your being on the front lines, means so much to these agents. And we once a month, we go down with truckloads of stuff and we just say, here it is. And it gets passed out to all the agents and they love it because it says, you know, even if they don't know it or they don't know the people who are giving it to them personally, they know that there are the people they're protecting. There are some of us out there that are watching and are so appreciative of everything they do. So that might be something that you consider doing in your state. Maybe your clubs can start up something, your state can start up something, just to let our border agents know how important what they do is. Because our border isn't just, it's not just a Southern problem. I mean, it affects all of our states. And we need to let them know we can't fix the problem, but we can support our agents.
I have personally been in McAllen, Texas, where Republican Women of Texas have delivered thousands of dollars worth of goods to our officers to be distributed amongst agents. Happened in Del Rio when I was in Del Rio during the Haitian crisis. Yep. Republican Women of Texas delivered thousands of dollars of good, hand sanitizer, electrolyte type drinks, you know, different things like that that's going to help keep Border Patrol agents safe. And I can't tell you how grateful the agents were for everything that the Republican Women of Texas did when they delivered all of these goods. It was fantastic to see.
Well, it's like I say, we can't fix the border ourselves. It's a policy thing. It's a political thing. We can talk to our representatives and tell them how important it is. But when it comes right down to it, we can't fix it, but we can support our agents. And I would encourage everyone to do that. Okay, Erica, do we have any questions that have popped up?
No, it's been a great presentation.
Oh my gosh, everyone's so quiet.
Oh, here's so a question says, how can our Republican women help change the policies that are responsible?
Okay.
So let's look at Texas, for instance. If you look at what Governor Abbott has done, he's done more than any other governor that I've ever seen. And when Glennis, you hit the nail on the head when you said it's not just a border state issue. And the reason why it's not just a border state issue is because what crosses in Texas doesn't stay in Texas. It works its way to Iowa, to Missouri, to Kansas, to Maine, to Florida. It works its way throughout the United States, whether that's criminal aliens, whether that's drugs, or whether it's just people that are looking for a better life but take jobs from U.S. citizens, or overwhelm the infrastructure and resources that exist in countries, such as healthcare, such as schooling, and all of those different things. So what crosses in Texas doesn't necessarily stay in Texas. It goes throughout the entire United States. Once again, the best thing that can be done is pick up that phone, send emails to your governor, call the governor's office, send emails to your elected U.S. representative and your U.S. senators. Send flood their phone lines with calls. They get it. When they start getting a bunch of these calls, when they start getting a bunch of these emails, I'm back in Washington, D.C. right now. I'm going to address the entire House Republican conference tomorrow. They understand and they recognize when they get these calls, these emails, and it pushes them to action. It does a lot.
You hear that, ladies? Call your congressman first thing in the morning. Let them know before they go to that meeting that you care about this issue. Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions, I would like to thank Brandon one more time. I'm so appreciative of your taking time out and being with us today. I truly, this is such a big issue. It's such an important issue, and I can't stress it enough. Because I'm on the border so often, I do get to see it more than other people do. And I try to tell everyone I can convince to sit still long enough to listen how important this issue is, because it does affect all of us. So I want to thank you very much for taking the time out to join us.
Gladys, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I hope you all enjoyed this month's Empower Hour. Please join us next month on Tuesday, June 14th. Put it on your calendar now, when we discuss DEFCON 3, China, Ukraine, and U.S. security with Ashley Smith Thomas. You again, I look forward to seeing you next month on June the 14th. Ciao.